Terry, let me just say I have been very frustrated by recent reports on the overuse of isolation from the general population at ICE facilities, including at Northwest ICE Processing Center in Tacoma. University of Washington researchers found that over the last 5 years, half of the 10 longest placements in administrative segregation across ICE's national population were at that facility. And I want to stress how concerning it is that ICE continues to use this practice so frequently for so many individuals and reportedly does so without consistent, accurate documentation of its use. What steps has ICE taken to make sure its contractors are following ICE policy on the use of administrative segregation?
Chair Murray, this is an issue that I am underway in reviewing with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, with ICE. The use of segregation sometimes is at the request of the individual detainee, him or herself, by reason of circumstances in a facility. Sometimes it is for the safety and security of our personnel or other detainees. It's a very case-specific issue, but I am meeting with members of the community as well as the workforce, and I just need about 3 weeks to circle back with you and give you a full report on the path ahead, because I know it is an issue of concern to you and to others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would really like you to commit to an independent investigation conducted by an entity outside of the department to inspect the conditions and practices at that ICE facility in Tacoma. Would you be willing to do that?
I would be very pleased to consider that. Chair Murray, if I may, we have a new leader of the Office of the Detention Ombudsman, an office that was created specifically for this purpose. Her name is Michelle Branet, and I think she would be extraordinarily capable in conducting this review if that would be satisfactory to you, and I'd be pleased to discuss it with you.
Okay, I will talk with you about that, but I really strongly caution that ICE needs to take these unsafe, inhumane conditions we have seen documented actually over the last 2 decades very seriously when you consider renewing the contract at that facility. It expires in 2025, and I will continue to talk with you about that.
Thank you.
Secondly, over the last 6 months, the President has repeatedly sought support from Congress to fund critical needs on our border. It's funding that provides a humane environment for some of the most vulnerable people in our hemisphere. It is funding that supports the critical work of the agents and officers who safeguard our border, and critical resources to improve the detection and seizure of narcotics, including fentanyl, preventing these threats from entering our communities. Most recently, that included our bipartisan effort in the Senate that combined both policy changes and new resources. Given the recent FY24 appropriations provided to the Department, along with the ever-evolving threats on our border, are there additional resources the Department needs in fiscal year 24?
There are. Chair Murray, we continue to believe that the resources and the legislative changes that were contained in the bipartisan legislation are greatly needed by our department and would really advance our mission.
Okay, thank you. And our committee will work with you on that as we move through this year's process. On a different topic, habitat restoration projects in my home state of Washington and really throughout the country are really key to recovering our endangered species like salmon and upholding our tribal treaty rights. However, the current standards for FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program do not differentiate between requirements for important habitat restoration projects and development projects like a parking lot or a strip mall. So as a result of that, habitat restoration projects that pose minimal risk to people or structures often experience very lengthy permitting delays and millions of dollars in cost increases. And in some cases, our local partners have given up on pursuing any kind of habitat projects entirely because of these FEMA rules. How can we work with your office to ensure that these important projects can move forward in a timely and cost-effective manner?
Chair Murray, I am not tracking this discrete issue. I will pay close attention to it and then
okay, if we could get back together on that, it's become a real challenge for us. And finally, I know the senator from Alaska asked you about the Coast Guard, also critical to my state. They are continuing to try to modernize their fleet and replace older vessels that are now working far beyond their expected service lives. Many of those programs, like the offshore patrol cutter, require investments in shoreside infrastructure to adequately accommodate their needs. With so many capital investments needs across the service, how does your FY25 budget prioritize those investments to make sure the Coast Guard continues to have the assets and capabilities it needs to execute its mission?
Chair Murray, I remember very well when you and I visited a Coast Guard facility in your jurisdiction when I served as the Deputy Secretary. The FY25 budget does provide for 2 additional cutters to begin that process, but I do believe that Senator Murkowski is correct that we need to fund the Coast Guard at a greater level than historically has been the case.
Very good. And I'll just mention quickly, I'm out of time, but on child care, it's an issue near and dear to me, and we've just provided new authority in the 25 appropriations bill to use operations and support funding across your department to fund an employee emergency backup child care program. If you can get back to me on how that's going to be implemented and how that's going to be used, I would really appreciate it.
Most certainly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.